10 car brands have lost their manufacturing facilities, and the consequences are catastrophic. While you have been told that factory closures are just strategic consolidation, the reality is far more desperate. These automakers are hemorrhaging inventory at fire sale prices because production has stopped, suppliers have abandoned them, and bankruptcy lawyers are circling. The same brands that once commanded premium pricing are now practically giving away vehicles just to generate any cash flow before the doors close permanently. Dealerships are slashing prices by 50% or more on brand new vehicles that will never receive proper parts support or warranty service. You have been fed lies about temporary shutdowns and restructuring plans. The truth is, these companies are in death spirals. In this video, I am exposing exactly which 10 brands lost their factories, why their inventory is now selling for pennies on the dollar, and what this means if you are considering buying one of these orphaned vehicles. Subscribe right now, because what I am about to reveal will change how you see the entire automotive industry. Number 1 on this list is not just closing factories, it is already liquidating assets to pay creditors. Number 10, Mitsubishi. The silent factory shutdown of Mitsubishi's North American production capability happened so quietly that most consumers still do not realize this brand is operating on borrowed time. The closure of their Illinois manufacturing facility in 2023 marked the beginning of the end, eliminating the brand's only domestic production footprint and transforming every Mitsubishi sold in America into an import dependent on complex international logistics chains. What dealerships are not telling customers is that current inventory represents the last significant shipments before distribution networks collapse entirely. Industry insiders report that Mitsubishi's logistics partners are demanding payment up front, a devastating sign that credit lines have been severed and trust has evaporated. Without factory production commitments to guarantee future business, shipping companies and port operators are treating Mitsubishi as a credit risk, requiring cash before moving containers. The fire sale pricing now visible across Mitsubishi dealerships reflects this desperate liquidity crisis. Outlander models that should retail for $30,000 are being advertised at $18,000. Mirages are practically being given away at under $12,000. These are not normal incentives or seasonal promotions. These are liquidation prices designed to convert metal into cash before the entire operation collapses. Smart buyers might think these deals represent opportunities, but the long-term consequences are terrifying. Parts availability nightmares are already emerging for recent model year vehicles as suppliers cut off Mitsubishi accounts. Owners are reporting wait times exceeding 6 weeks for basic components like sensors and control modules. Once the dealer network inevitably contracts further, finding anyone willing to work on these orphaned vehicles will become nearly impossible. The service infrastructure that makes car ownership viable is crumbling in real time. Warranty concerns represent another ticking time bomb for anyone purchasing these discounted vehicles. Number 9. Polestar. The electric vehicle startup that lost its factory before establishing real market presence is discovering that manufacturing capability matters more than design awards. Polestar's production crisis stems from its complicated relationship with parent company Geely and manufacturing partner Volvo, relationships that are fracturing under financial pressure. The Chinese factory that produced Polestar vehicles has significantly reduced output, prioritizing more profitable Volvo models over the money-losing Polestar brand. Production numbers tell the devastating story. Planned production of 60,000 units for 2025 was quietly revised down to 22,000, then again to fewer than 15,000 actual vehicles. This collapse in manufacturing volume has created a supply chain death spiral, where component suppliers are abandoning contracts due to insufficient order volumes to maintain profitability. Without manufacturing scale, the unit economics become impossible. Every Polestar vehicle is now being sold at a staggering loss, as fixed development costs are spread across far fewer units than projected. Financial analysts estimate losses exceeding $20,000 per vehicle sold, a completely unsustainable situation that explains why dealers are offering unprecedented discounts, exceeding 35% off original pricing. The dealer network is imploding as franchise partners realize they backed a dying brand. Polestar locations that opened with great fanfare are closing after less than 2 years of operation. These dealers invested millions in facility requirements, specialized equipment, and training, only to discover that parent company support is evaporating. Without factory commitment to future models and consistent inventory supply, these dealerships cannot sustain operations. What makes Polestar particularly tragic is that the vehicles themselves are objectively excellent. The Polestar 2 earned strong reviews for driving dynamics, interior quality, and technology integration. But excellent products cannot overcome catastrophic business fundamentals. Without a functioning factory, predictable supply chain, or sustainable business model, even great vehicles become orphan curiosities that savvy buyers should avoid regardless of tempting discounts. Number 8. Fisker. The repeated factory failure of this electric vehicle brand is becoming a case study in how not to run an automotive company. Fisker's loss of manufacturing partnerships represents an almost unprecedented series of business disasters. First, the Magna Steyr partnership for Fisker Ocean production collapsed under quality disputes and payment issues. Then, the planned Ohio factory revival never materialized beyond press releases and political photo opportunities. Most recently, the Foxconn manufacturing agreement that was supposed to save the company dissolved in mutual recriminations and unmet milestones. The inventory liquidation happening now represents possibly the final opportunity to recoup anything from this disaster. Fisker Ocean vehicles originally priced near $70,000 are being advertised at $29,000. These are not discounts. These are bankruptcy auction prices. Dealers are unloading inventory before Fisker formally enters Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, which industry analysts now consider inevitable before the end of 2026. The software nightmare plaguing existing Fisker vehicles reveals what happens when factory support disappears before products mature. Ocean owners are experiencing cascading software failures because the development team has been largely terminated. Promised over-the-air updates have stopped arriving. Known bugs remain unfixed. Features that were supposed to be enabled through software unlocks will never function. These vehicles have effectively been abandoned by their creator before even completing their first year of ownership. Parts availability is non-existent for a brand without functioning factory relationships. Fisker owners involved in even minor accidents are discovering that body panels, sensors, and trim pieces simply do not exist in any supply chain. Insurance companies are totaling vehicles with relatively minor damage because repair parts cannot be sourced at any price. This parts crisis will only intensify as the company moves through bankruptcy proceedings. Number 7. Lordstown Motors. The American electric truck startup that lost everything, including its factory, represents one of the most spectacular automotive failures of the decade. The foreclosure of their Ohio manufacturing facility marked the definitive end of a company that promised to revolutionize electric work trucks, but instead became a cautionary tale of over-promising and under-delivering. The Endurance electric pickup exists in extremely limited numbers, with fewer than 500 units actually produced before production stopped permanently. Those vehicles are now automotive artifacts, orphan products from a defunct manufacturer. The few dealers who accepted Lordstown inventory are liquidating at 70% discounts, essentially giving them away to anyone willing to accept the massive risks of owning an unsupportable vehicle. The fraud investigations swirling around Lordstown's collapse reveal that factory problems were hidden from investors and customers for months. Securities regulators are examining whether executives knowingly misrepresented production capabilities while selling vehicles and stock. These investigations confirm what many suspected. The factory was never truly operational in any sustainable sense, and the entire enterprise was built on projections that insiders knew were impossible. Bankruptcy proceedings are revealing the depth of the disaster. Creditors are fighting over whatever assets remain, from factory equipment to intellectual property. The legal battles will continue for years, but one thing is certain: Lordstown vehicle owners will receive zero support from this process. Warranty claims will be denied. Parts inventory will be sold to the highest bidder without regard for existing owners. Service technical information will disappear when servers are shut down. The workforce devastation in the Youngstown area compounds the tragedy. Thousands of workers were hired with promises of long-term employment in a revitalized American auto industry, only to be laid off when the factory closed. These workers invested in relocations, training, and career changes based on Lordstown's promises. Number 6. Byton. The Chinese electric vehicle brand that lost its factory before a single vehicle reached American customers represents a billion-dollar failure that few people even know happened. Byton's Nanjing factory closure eliminated any possibility of the brand ever entering the North American market despite years of auto show appearances and media hype. The undelivered pre-orders represent another deposit disaster for trusting consumers. Thousands of customers placed deposits for Byton vehicles based on impressive prototypes and convincing presentations at major auto shows. Those deposits are gone, consumed by a company that spent billions on development, marketing, and executive salaries without ever establishing sustainable production. The bankruptcy proceedings in China offer no hope for American deposit holders seeking refunds. The concept vehicle deception is particularly egregious in Byton's case. The M-Byte SUV that appeared at auto shows featured impressive interior screens, facial recognition technology, and autonomous capabilities. Media outlets covered these features extensively, building consumer excitement and deposit demand, but industry insiders knew that many showcased features were non-functional prototypes, and that the path from concept to production was far longer and more expensive than Byton acknowledged. The manufacturing partner abandonment that killed Byton's factory plans reveals how precarious startup automaker production really is. Byton's announced partnerships with established manufacturers and contract producers all collapsed as financial projections failed to materialize. Without their own factory and unable to secure reliable manufacturing partnerships, Byton had no path to actually building vehicles, regardless of how many deposits they collected. Number 5. Lucid Motors. The luxury electric vehicle maker is discovering that losing effective factory control through financial desperation creates an irreversible death spiral. Lucid's Arizona factory production collapse has reduced output to a fraction of projections, with actual production running at less than 20% of promised capacity. This manufacturing failure is forcing inventory liquidation that destroys the luxury positioning the brand spent billions establishing. The cash burn crisis at Lucid is extraordinary even by electric vehicle startup standards. The company is consuming approximately $600 million per quarter while generating minimal revenue from limited vehicle sales. This burn rate is unsustainable, and the financing sources are drying up as investors lose confidence in the business model. Factory slowdowns reflect this cash crisis as Lucid cannot afford to maintain full production operations. Saudi Arabia funding complications add geopolitical risk to Lucid's already precarious situation. The Saudi Public Investment Fund, which owns over 60% of Lucid, is reportedly growing impatient with the continued losses and limited progress. While Saudi funding has kept Lucid alive longer than independent operations would have survived, this dependence creates strategic vulnerability. If Saudi priorities shift or political complications arise, Lucid's lifeline could be severed overnight. The discounting desperation visible at Lucid dealerships contradicts everything about the brand's luxury positioning. Air sedans originally priced above $100,000 are being offered with incentives exceeding $30,000. Some dealers are advertising prices in the $60,000 range for vehicles that were supposed to compete with Mercedes S-Class and BMW 7 Series. This discounting destroys residual values and confirms that luxury positioning has failed. The reservation cancellation wave reveals collapsing consumer confidence in Lucid's survival. Thousands of reservation holders who placed deposits are requesting refunds rather than taking delivery. These cancellations create a vicious cycle where reduced orders justify further factory slowdowns, which increase unit costs, which require greater discounting, which further damages brand perception. Number 4. Rivian. The electric truck and SUV maker is experiencing manufacturing reality far different from the startup hype that drove its spectacular initial valuation. Rivian's factory production shortfalls have forced repeated downward revisions of delivery projections, destroying the growth narrative that justified the company's valuation. The Illinois factory that was supposed to produce hundreds of thousands of vehicles annually is struggling to maintain output above 50,000 units. The supplier relationship breakdown is crippling Rivian's ability to increase production even when demand exists. Multiple component suppliers have reduced shipments to Rivian or demanded payment terms that reflect the company's deteriorating financial condition. These supplier problems create production bottlenecks where vehicle assembly stops waiting for basic components. The resulting inventory volatility forces dealers to offer aggressive incentives on whatever vehicles they can actually receive. The price cut desperation at Rivian has seen the company reduce R1T and R1S pricing multiple times in attempts to stimulate demand and maintain factory utilization. These cuts, sometimes exceeding $12,000 per vehicle, devastate existing owners who purchased at higher prices and confirm that original pricing was disconnected from market reality. Early adopters who paid premium prices are underwater on vehicles less than 1 year old. The cash burn acceleration at Rivian is consuming resources faster than even pessimistic projections anticipated. The company is spending more than $1 billion quarterly while generating minimal gross profit from vehicle sales. Even with billions in remaining cash and credit facilities, this burn rate provides only limited runway before additional capital raises become necessary. Each capital raise dilutes existing shareholders and confirms that the business model remains unsustainable. The Amazon van contract, once celebrated as validation of Rivian's commercial viability, is now recognized as a money-losing obligation that worsens financial performance. Rivian is delivering electric vans to Amazon at prices below production cost under contractual terms that seemed reasonable during the 2020 funding euphoria, but are now recognized as financially disastrous. Every van delivered to Amazon increases Rivian's losses, yet contract obligations require continued production. Number 3. VinFast. The Vietnamese automaker's American factory failure represents an international embarrassment and a cautionary tale about underestimating automotive manufacturing complexity. VinFast's North Carolina factory cancellation eliminated any hope of establishing credible American production and confirmed that the brand's ambitious global expansion was built on unrealistic projections. The promise of American jobs and local production evaporated, leaving only import dependence on Vietnamese factories that lack the scale and efficiency to compete with established manufacturers. The quality crisis plaguing early VinFast vehicles confirms that factory problems extend far beyond location. Initial deliveries of VF8 electric SUVs have been plagued with build quality issues, software problems, and component failures that suggest immature manufacturing processes. Reviews from automotive media and early owners describe vehicles that feel unfinished, with inconsistent panel gaps, malfunctioning technology, and concerning mechanical noises. The dealer network rejection is unprecedented for a brand attempting to establish American presence. VinFast's inability to recruit quality dealer partners has forced the company into direct sales models and pop-up retail locations that lack the infrastructure to support ongoing service and warranty needs. Established dealer groups that typically compete for new franchises have almost universally rejected VinFast opportunities, recognizing the risks of supporting a brand with questionable long-term viability. The inventory desperation fire sale at VinFast makes even heavily discounted competitors look expensive. VF8 vehicles originally priced near $50,000 are being offered at under $32,000 with various incentives and subsidies. These prices represent staggering losses per vehicle as VinFast attempts to establish any market presence before cash reserves are exhausted. The discounting confirms that consumer demand at rational prices is essentially non-existent. The Vietnamese government backing that enables VinFast's continued operation despite massive losses creates market distortion that disadvantages legitimate competitors. VinFast parent company, Vingroup, has deep pockets from Vietnamese real estate and other holdings, allowing continued automotive losses that would have bankrupted independent companies. This government-supported dumping allows VinFast to offer unsustainable pricing that damages market dynamics for all electric vehicle manufacturers. Number 2. Arrival. The British electric vehicle startup's factory approach was revolutionary in theory, but catastrophic in execution. Arrival's microfactory concept promised to transform automotive manufacturing through small local facilities using robotic assembly and innovative production techniques. Instead, the concept proved economically unviable, and the company has closed all manufacturing facilities without delivering significant vehicle volumes. The microfactory failure reveals that automotive manufacturing scale matters more than startup founders wanted to believe. Arrival's thesis was that small facilities producing thousands rather than hundreds of thousands of units could be profitable through reduced capital investment and operational flexibility. Reality proved that traditional automotive manufacturers built massive factories because scale is essential to achieving viable unit economics. Without volume, the fixed costs of engineering, tooling, and compliance become insurmountable. The prototype vehicle deception at Arrival was egregious, with showcased vehicles giving false impressions of production readiness. The electric vans and buses that Arrival displayed at events and used in publicity materials were far from production specification. Many critical systems were non-functional or placeholder components. The gap between prototype demonstration and actual production capability was far wider than marketing suggested, misleading investors and customers about timeline and viability. The investment money vanished into development and overhead without producing sustainable operations. Arrival raised over $600 million from investors, including high-profile venture capital firms and strategic partners like UPS and Hyundai. Those investments are now worthless, consumed by salaries, facilities, and development costs without creating functioning business. The bankruptcy proceedings will recover almost nothing for investors. The UPS contract cancellation was the death blow that eliminated any remaining path to survival. UPS had committed to purchasing 10,000 electric vans from Arrival, providing the volume anchor that justified the entire business plan. When UPS canceled this commitment after Arrival failed to meet delivery timelines and quality standards, the company lost its only significant customer and any hope of achieving necessary production volume. Number 1. Faraday Future. The most spectacular factory failure and fire sale disaster in automotive history combines fraud allegations, bankruptcy, and vehicles that may never receive proper support despite actually reaching some customers. Faraday Future's manufacturing capability exists only nominally, with production measured in single digits per month rather than thousands per year. The Nevada factory that was supposed to employ thousands never materialized beyond foundation work before the project was abandoned. Current production occurs in a rented facility where vehicles are essentially hand-built by remaining workers without proper tooling or established processes. The executive exodus at Faraday Future has seen virtually every credible manager depart amid allegations of mismanagement and fraud. The revolving door of CFOs, COOs, and engineering leaders suggests a company ungovernable and dysfunctional at the highest levels. Remaining executives face investigations and lawsuits from former partners, suppliers, and investors alleging fraud, breach of contract, and misappropriation. The FF91 vehicles that actually reached customers represent some of the most expensive and least supported vehicles ever sold. The handful of owners who took delivery of these vehicles, some paying over $200,000, now own automotive orphans. When mechanical or electrical problems occur, parts do not exist, service capability is non-existent, and factory support is a fantasy. These owners bought $250,000 paperweights. The funding scheme desperation at Faraday Future has devolved into mechanisms that destroy existing shareholders while generating minimal operating capital. Repeated reverse splits, ATM offerings, and dilutive financing have reduced early shareholders' stakes to nearly worthless fractions of original investments. The company continues raising money in increasingly desperate ways, each capital raise further destroying equity value while providing only brief operational runway. The bankruptcy threat that has hung over Faraday Future for years is finally becoming reality. Multiple suppliers and creditors have filed involuntary bankruptcy petitions seeking to force the company into Chapter 11. These filings will likely succeed given the company's inability to pay debts as they come due. Bankruptcy will formally orphan the few vehicles that reach customers, eliminating even theoretical warranty support and parts availability. The fire sale of inventory and assets is happening through mechanisms designed to generate any possible cash. Display vehicles, prototype components, and miscellaneous assets are being auctioned through liquidators. So there you have it. 10 automotive brands that went from factory floors to liquidation fire sales, proving that manufacturing capability is not optional in the car business. What this really shows us is that great designs, impressive technology, and compelling marketing mean absolutely nothing without functioning factories and sustainable production. These brands are dumping inventory at catastrophic discounts, not because they want to be generous, but because converting metal into cash is the only way to pay creditors before complete collapse. The vehicles being sold for pennies on the dollar come with risks that no discount can justify: no parts, no service, no warranty, and no future. Which of these factory failures shocked you most? Tell me in the comments if you think any of these brands can actually recover or if they are all headed for the automotive graveyard. Hit that like button so more people understand what is really happening when factories close and inventory gets liquidated. Subscribe because the automotive industry collapse is accelerating and you need to know which brands are next.